Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see you here. We'd like to welcome our conference minister, Molly Carlson, who's going to give us a little bit of an update as to what's going on, new and exciting, old and frivolous, and current and what's happening. Thank you. Without further ado, Molly is all on you.
Thank you, Terrell. Glad to see you all. I've been having other meetings on Wednesday afternoons and haven't been able to be regular at the all conference chat. So I'm glad to be with you all today. I would really like to make this a conversation where I'm able to answer things that are on your mind, but I'll start off with a little bit of some overview things. We had our annual meeting in October, and so we've got all new committees that are sorting themselves out, figuring out which way is up and what it is they are supposed to do, trying to do, wanting to do, hoping to do, dreaming about, all those good things. We are ending the year. We never know quite how we're going to end the year financially until the end of January. And that's just the reality of how OCWM comes in. Those of you who are active in churches know that your income comes in heavily at the end of the year, and you make final decisions about sending on your OCWM gifts late in the year. The deadline this coming year will be January the 10th, is the last day we are accepting 2022 OCWM gifts. Anything after that will be applied to 2023. So it's not like it's the deadline for giving sending in OCWM dollars. Is just for what year it gets applied to. We so value all of your gifts and your support. So we are anticipating that. So we won't really know. Right now, our finances look good. They look strong, but we won't really know what our end of the year is going to look like. We make all sorts of assumptions of what we expect OCWM to come in at, but we really never know. So it's one of those, you operate on faith into the end of January. So I'm at the point where I'm getting a little antsy to know how that all turns out, but we won't know yet. We have, with the approval of our 2023 budget, we have a couple of things going on. One is we have named a search committee for the third associate conference minister. Stephanie Purdue has done a fantastic job, and I would love to be able to say, let's just have her apply, but we need to be consistent with our commitment to calling her as an intentional interim. She's done great work. She's done a really good job for us. She's really very clear about that. We're very clear about that. She came as an intentional interim because we needed to make hard decisions about whether or not we could continue funding 3 associate conference ministers. We also were trying out some new ways of reorienting the ACM work. And I think we've learned and achieved quite a lot in that work over this last year. So I'm really excited to be able to initiate the search committee for a settled associate conference minister. This will be the first time in, I think, maybe 5 years that we will have had 3 called, settled associate conference ministers. We've spent a lot of time with acting ACMs and transitional ACMs and interim ACMs. And I think we are due for a little time of settledness, and having 3 settled ACMs will round out our team beautifully. So we hope to be posting that position early in the year. So if you know folks that need to apply, be sure to encourage them. What else? The other big thing that we really have going on right now is our initiating the work around our governance renewal. I don't think I've attended a meeting in my 2+ years as conference minister where something hasn't come up about the governance. The nominating team doesn't work right. We have too many people that assigned to this committee. We don't have enough people assigned to this committee. We don't have any way to manage when we don't have, too many times we don't have quorum. We don't have any way to manage when we have people assigned to a committee that never attend. How do we move them off? What do we do when we have open positions? Who's in charge of nominating, and what's the role of the association? We also have this challenge in the conference of finding the balance between small enough to be nimble and large enough to be diverse, right? We want both. And we haven't really mastered that. And our current constitution and bylaws were written so long ago and only modified and not really significantly reviewed and revisioned. So we end up with this place where there's just some tension and some challenge in our system that is created by our current constitution, bylaws, and the related support governing documents for the associations. Now, want to say polity-wise, there is a conference and there are associations. I'm not trying to get rid of associations. I'm not trying to take over the work in any sort of way. I think there's still an important role and purpose for associations, and but we need to take a look at how we do our work when we become more clear and we're focused on the work of who the conference is. And you all have heard me say this. I know all of you here have heard me say that the conference is all of the members of all of the churches and all of the clergy and all of the covenantal partners that are affiliated with the United Church of Christ and located in the northern 2/3 of Illinois. And our work, the work of the whole conference, not just the conference staff, not just the elected officials, but the work of the whole conference, our shared work. So individual congregations have their individual purpose, but the shared work of the conference is to support local churches in ways they're stronger together. And so everything we do should be looking through that filter. How we call our staff, how we organize our standing committees, how we choose our priorities, how we decide how our staff spends their time, how we set our priorities, what we do first or most, or how we spend our time and treasure, right? You want to look at the values of an organization, you look at the calendar, and you look at the checkbook, right? That tells you what the organization really values. And if our work is around supporting churches in ways they're stronger together, everything we do should be viewed through that filter, and how we choose what we do should be viewed through that filter. So we actually have a meeting this afternoon of the governance renewal team. That's what I'm calling it right now. Yep, and John Prane is on that. Barbara Lorbach is here with us. She's on that committee or on that team, as is Hank Fairman and Kathy Hummel and Benna Bell and Gloria Cox and Mary Newcomb and myself. I knew I'd come up with all of them sooner or later. And one of the things we're talking about today is one of our first tasks. So we named this small committee to be nimble in doing the work, but 8 people can't do all the work. And it doesn't allow for the diversity that we want. So one of our first tasks is to name an advisory committee that will be maybe 30 or 40 folks. We don't have a set number. It could be 10, it could be 60. It is some number of folks to be, I think the number isn't so clear as the purpose is. And the purpose of this committee is to be a sounding board for the governance renewal leadership team, to be individuals that might get pulled into a particular task, maybe a writing task, or helping facilitate town hall meetings or other listening session sorts of opportunities. those sorts of things. So they won't be meeting as regularly as the leadership team, but they will be the first and primary sounding board for all the work that is emerging. The timeline goals for this team are to have, John, correct me if I say this wrong. I think how I've been saying it is actionable deliverable, having some sort of actionable deliverable by the 23 annual celebration. That doesn't necessarily mean a full revised documents. It could be statements of purpose or some strategic planning stuff or some an outline, a proposed outline of how the team imagines our governance needs to be fleshed out. It could be several different things. And then I would hope by annual celebration 24, we would have a full draft, at least a draft of working documents. And then that could be a time for information gathering. It could be that we've already done that information gathering and we feel like we have documents we're ready to vote on. I kind of doubt it. I think this work is slower than we might hope, but it's slow because we're really deeply committed to broad engagement and having this something that the whole conference owns. The conference isn't the 17 of us on this call today. The conference is 60,000 people. Now, not all 60,000 are going to add their voice or their vote, but we want to create opportunities so that as many people in the conference as can, are willing and want to participate comes next to be able to be part of that. John, does that reflect kind of how you see?
I think overall, yeah, I think it does. I think there are 2 or 3 commitments that are there. And again, for those who don't know, I'm John Prane, pastor at the Avon Federated Church in Avon, Illinois, but also I'm the conference president as of the last annual celebration, the end of the meeting. I think that there's 2 or 3 things. We want to get it done as quickly as possible because we don't want it to linger forever, but we want to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
We want to have as many voices heard as possible and try to get as much input as possible. So we don't want to rush it. But on the other hand, we know what we have isn't working right now. So we got to find that balance. And I think you've kind of worded it correctly. You know, we're not going to rush, but we're not going to sit there and let this hang there till, 2032 either.
Right. The balance of forward movement and broad engagement. So those are the real highlights I wanted to just talk about off the top of my head. I want to really open this up and welcome questions from you. I'm happy to address anything. Did I just really say that out loud? Okay, I might have some boundaries on that, but not many. So what's on your mind? What are you curious about? What would you like to know more about that's going on related to the conference? Jim.
I would be interested in knowing your assessment. You introduced a new administrative structure, for the conference. It has been a period of time since that's been in operation. Would be interested in your assessment, if it's appropriate to sort of
Sure.
say, how is that, new structure working out at this particular point? Where and how does it need to be tweaked, et cetera?
Thanks. We've been doing little tweaks along the way, as we notice things, not trying to wait till the whole process gets settled. There are a couple different segments I want to talk about. The first I want to talk about are support staff. We had several association-based support staff, and there were a lot of things we were doing well, some things we weren't doing at all, and some things that we weren't doing so great. And I feel great about the improvements. We have 3 full-time staff people working out of Westchester. We have integrated significant improvements around using digital tools to improve our work, including various software solutions and automation and digitizing our files, simplifying a lot of processes, streamlining processes. But as new processes are implemented, it just takes a little while for everybody to get on board with how that works. I think have really are going really well. Some that are earlier in their adoption phase and are still in that adoption phase, where it's for a while to iron out some of the challenges. One of the most visible changes for folks is the change with the ACMs and the MLT, which is the ministry leadership team, which is the associate conference ministers and myself. And there are 4 of us, 3 ACMs and myself. I think Stephanie's working with pastoral transitions, has dramatically improved and streamlined the process of working with search committees. She is very prompt in responding to search committees and able to sort of standardize the work that she does with each of them, rather than having all 3 ACMs trying to manage the list of who across the conference might be open to doing interim ministries, just all sorts of things. I think that she has done some really great work supporting the pastoral transition from the point of discerning that it might be time to leave a call, through departures and interims, and all the way through the calling of a next settled minister. We celebrate with her as calls are finalized. We talk about those a lot at our Monday morning meetings. I also appreciate that she's been communicating those in our Faithful Fridays, when she'll put out that there's several pastoral changes, and that word is getting out to the whole conference. Now, not the whole conference is going to read Faithful Fridays, but those that do, there is communication going out about all of our pastoral transitions, which I'm really grateful for. It's not something that was happening when I came or before I came. So I'm glad that that's happening. Terrell has been doing some really great work around some justice issues and about programming things. He was really involved with annual celebration this year, and he learned a ton. I'm excited about the work that's already gotten started about annual celebration for this coming year. Carol, can I say out loud dates and location? So we are already set for live in person in Yorkville at our Yorkville UCC church. I think Yorkville Congregational, First Congregational Yorkville. I'm not sure the name of the church. Saint something.
Yorkville UCC.
Yorkville UCC.
It's Yorkville Congregational.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Would know for sure. At Yorkville Congregation, November 3rd and 4th of 2023. So more information will be coming. We're not even quite ready to be putting out the save the date. So you that are here on this call get a little bit of a preview that's not quite ready out there yet. We've also been talking a lot about the need for clergy and lay continuing ed. And we aren't staffed in a way that allows us to offer most of that those continuing ed opportunities. But what we can and need to do is curate look at all that's out there and available and curate opportunities that fit our setting, so that our clergy and our lay people, our churches are aware of have the opportunities around boundary awareness training, about anti-racism work, about lay ministerial standing, developing lay ministers in our midst, or alternative paths towards ministry, and more. You know, how to be strong lay leaders, how to do finances in your church, how to deal with governance issues, how to set up an endowment. There's so many questions that come up around all of these sorts of things that we're trying, that Terrell's in particular is working on sort of curating those resources in a way that's presentable and accessible for our churches. Carol, do you have anything to add to your portfolio and the things you're able to focus on?
Another thing, innovation and how we start to look at helping churches with programs other than TPERC. Looking at where we are assessing our churches, and we're discerning where God is calling us to next. And so that would kind of fall up under innovation and a couple other programs we'd like to launch in 2023. Excited about next week's topic, and discussion leader is going to talk about what Molly kind of shared with you, lay leadership training. And Tisha Brown is going to be our speaker, and she's going to talk about a program that was launched in the Wisconsin Conference, shared with the Minnesota Conference, and also opened up to the Illinois Conference. And that'll be the Damascus Project, looking at lay leadership development and training. So excited about some of the new things.
The other thing, you've done some good work around restorative justice and restorative church that I look forward to rolling out in ways that are hands-on accessible to our congregations, to utilize in their churches, to expand upon, to really help our churches be stronger together. And then Kathy has been working with the 5 committees on ministries. She's working, she's able to help build consistencies and best practices across the 5 associations. So Committee on Ministry is an association-based program or committee by our polity, and there's no intention of changing that. But there are some things we could do conference-wide, like she's done a lot of work with our fitness response team, which is a conference-wide committee that supports the fitness review process. Really has built some robust support around that, looking at building consistent across the conference processes for things like transfer of standing, also for information review, clergy information review. It's not really clergy, it's authorized minister information review, and requirements and tracking requirements around continuing education, DEI work, and boundary awareness work. So I think having one person do each of those roles across the life of the whole conference has really brought some strengths, and will continue to as we settle even deeper into it. The other part of their work is around care and connection. We've talked about that as pastoral care. And last year it was when we started moving to some of these changes, that was the word I was looking for, decided to move the programmatic part of the job, make that change the end of last year, but keep the pastoral care responsibilities based around association boundaries. The MLT and I had, the ACMs and I had a retreat this fall where we took a look at what we do well, what we don't do well, and what we don't do in terms of supporting, particularly around pastoral care within the conference, and just had a really generative session around how we imagine we could do it better. And have put together a proposal. It came together just before annual celebration. So we didn't want to muddy the waters with it at that time. We had enough other stuff going on. So the personnel committee is actually going to be looking at that. They're the first group that takes a look at that, and they're going to take a look at that on Saturday. And then we'll have some more broader conversations, though. Personnel will help guide some of what our next steps are to roll that out, to improve that part. We feel really good about the proposal, but in all things, part of our commitment is broad engagement. So we will have more conversations with that before it gets. But the bottom line of your question, Jim, was how is it going? I feel really good about it. And I feel really optimistic about where we're going next with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. David asked in chat, where are we with the sale on properties? We have sold a couple properties this year. Right now, we have a contract on the first and are working through the due diligence period there's a daycare that's purchasing the former St. John UCC in Evanston. And so we're in due diligence with them about selling that property. We had an offer, maybe about our 8th offer on the property we have in North Berwyn. And that one fell through during the attorney review process. Because even though we had been very clear and required that any contract would say that it was as is, when they discovered that there were that we knew about issues that the village was having restrictions, they said they wouldn't continue, that we needed to reduce our price further. I'm like, the reason you even are looking at the price you're looking at, or why we even considered your offer, was at a greatly reduced price, because we know that there's going to be ongoing expenses. So we're working with our realtor to follow up with some other potential buyers who have expressed interest, but currently that one's on the market. We're in the process of finalizing the transfer of the deed of the Watson Park Namaste. So that's still in the works. And the property we have in Joliet, we're in the process of moving forward with that one. There is a very small Hispanic congregation utilizing that building. I don't even know that I can call it a congregation. It's a few folks, an extended family. But members of that family want the opportunity to buy that property. And so I have asked them to make us an offer. That's a lot of love you're getting there, Peg. My dogs do that. I love that. So we're still waiting on some behind the scenes things going on with Namaste Watson Park and with Joliet. And I think those are the only properties that we have active involvement with. I don't have Bob's whole report in front of me, but that's my understanding. David, did you have further questions about that? All right. D'Angelo sent me a question that just to me directly, so in chat. D'Angelo, I'd love to invite you on screen and to have a little conversation. D'Angelo and I both serve on the United Church of Christ board, and it's exceptional to have a conference with 2 members of us on that United Church of Christ board. So we sit on the board for the national setting of the United Church of Christ. And we haven't had great mechanisms for how we engage as national church board members with what's going on here in the Illinois Conference. So D'Angelo, you and I should have a conversation offline as we continue to do our UCCB work. But I'd welcome you to share your voice here in this space a little bit about the work that you do serving in that way, and how you imagine you'd like to be better connected with what's going on in the Illinois Conference.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I just was thinking, because, you know, being on this board for, I think, 2 years now, I haven't had any really engagement with our conference. And I think that there's this disconnect from the national setting to the local setting, and how churches are not aware of everything that the national setting is doing. And having now two people on the board, and actually like you know, someone who is not serving at a church but serving in chaplaincy, able to come and talk about what the national setting is doing, I think is an asset. And that's what I'm more, leaning towards, of how we can also tie in what we're doing as a conference to what is happening in the national setting, so that we can live out this covenant mutual relationship. Because we talk about covenant all the time, but are we really living into covenantal relationships, from the local church to the conference to national? Are we really living into that? And I think that's more my concern. And my hopes and vision is to bring a more unified commitment to covenantal relationships, from national to conference to local church.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad that you brought that up in this setting. There are several people that are involved in different layers of that conversation that could bring some opportunities for connection. Carol, I'm particularly looking at you with some of the work you're doing about where can we plug in other folks that are involved in the national setting to engage this conversation about covenant. John Prane, the council president, just popped off to attend the next meeting that we're going to. He's another one that can help think about that. Other folks that are involved in association leadership, because we're often talking about what's the covenant relationship between local church and association and conference and the national setting. We do have the 4 settings, and understanding that we are engaging around all of these things. David Holston just put a great suggestion in the chat. Since we're what about an article in our monthly newsletter? I think that could be a great way. We do have several opportunities to do that. We also, if you get I really try to funnel national news over to our regular newsletter around the video tour of the national setting, national setting offices, different programs that are being offered, join the movement, all those sorts of things. We'd have several opportunities in this setting. In our Wednesday All Conference chat in the past, we've presented several of those sorts of things. So there are things that have been happening, but I think engaging directly with you, D'Angelo, in that role and having some sort of facilitated conversation. Maybe it's going to be part of annual celebration. Maybe spring association meetings want to have more of a conversation around covenant and the different layers of covenant that we participate in. And we need to struggle with that discussion of the balance between autonomy and covenant. So I can see many ways of doing that. So I'm not going to give you a single answer today, but I'm so glad you brought up that conversation. Yeah, and more ideas are coming up here in the chat. So you've triggered some good thinking. So thank you so much. Are there other questions? What would you like to know about what's going on in the conference? Jim?
I was trying to remember, did we get a survey from the conference back a ways.
Mhm.
I don't recall getting any feedback from that survey. Anything surface in particular that you could share, that came out of that survey?
I think you're talking about the recent one about from Executive Service Corps. I sent out an email, said, please participate in the survey.
Right, yes.
Yeah, all of that survey was only closed last week. So it was closed just before Thanksgiving. And
Okay,
Executive Service Corps, thanks for bringing it up though, because I was meaning to touch on this. In 2020, the Conference Council contracted with Executive Service Corps to review the situation in our conference. And this is when we were just becoming aware of the financial crisis and all these sort of layers of issues here. This is before I came on board. And so 2 years in, and so much work that we've done over the last couple of years, I brought to council the recommendation that we contract with them again to review the work that we've done and where we are now, what we might learn from our last couple years to apply to what we're looking at doing next, and what we might need to go back and fill in any gaps. So Executive Service Corps did several things. They did a bunch of individual interviews. They did several focus group live interviews, and they sent out the survey to all clergy and any church leaders on our mailing list. Everybody on our mailing list got this. Not all, we knew full well that if we got 10% response rate, that's very good for a survey and statistically relevant. So Executive Service Corps asked for the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas to review all the data that they collected to create their report. They have their initial review meeting with the little subcommittee that's sort of working with them from our conference council, the very beginning of January. And I'm hoping that at our January council retreat, we'll be able to take some time to review the results. After council has seen it, more of a report out to all of the conference about that. So it's going to take a little time to process the data, but thank you so much for participating in that.
Oh, nice to be offered to participate in a survey about it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. No one's asking, and please interrupt me if you have a question. I'd be happy to address whatever you are, but one hot button topic that no one's asked about, and I didn't think to bring up at the beginning, is the issue of the ongoing conversation around our camps, right? We love and hate our camps. Right? We have two. We have Pilgrim Park and Tower Hill, and there are those that feel that the camps are the cornerstone, the backbone, the center, the spiritual ground of the conference. And there are those that see the camps as the financial wasteland of our conference, and ne'er the two shall meet. So over the last several years, we've laid out the challenge to our camps that to be able to sustain them, to be able to sustain and maintain our camps, they have to be financially self-sustaining. We have to view them differently. We have to view them as an asset of the conference in order to be able to offer that 10 to 20% usage that fulfills the mission of the conference, that supports local churches in ways that are stronger together. So we can do our youth camps and our retreats and our other activities. We have to have better other usage of the property to financially sustain our camps. So we did that right before COVID. and they haven't yet quite broken even. And we've had this discussion on the financial side every year. What do we do? How close is close? See, we were operating at about $250,000 a year deficit with our camps. And the conference general operating fund sustains the cash flow of the camps. So it puts us in a tricky position financially. Last year they came in, they proposed budgets that ended up with a fairly small deficit. And with the proposal that deficit would be covered by money that is sitting in funds dedicated, allocated, designated to the camps. This year, they did bring us a balanced budget, but operationally, they have a much bigger gap than they did last year. They do have the proposal that says they do have money in their savings account to cover the shortfall, operational shortfall. The big issue has been inflation. So electricity is more expensive, food is way more expensive, gas is more expensive. All of those things that take to run a large property and serve human beings, those costs have gone up and the income did not go up proportionately. So we're looking at a much larger gap this year, which is going to lead us into next year needing to have some really significant conversations about what this means. I have been very open from the beginning of my time here to say that I think these camps rise and fall together. That I don't see a future with getting rid of one camp. I think they balance each other out in many different ways and can sustain each other better over time. We do have to get so that these camps don't have infinite savings accounts. They cannot continue operating at this sort of deficit and be pulling from savings. Last year, part of what covered the operational deficit is a very generous response from individual donors. So they've had, during COVID, they had a goal of raising like $100,000 and they raised over just $107,000 in 2020. I don't remember the numbers in 2021, but this year, the individual donor response has been much lower. However, we've received quite a bit of large bequests and donations, but that hits the budget in a different place, right? That goes more into the endowment and the savings account than into supporting operational places. So I'm not saying we're making any decisions today. I'm just saying that the conversations are started, that there are very strong and very divergent points of view, and that just like I will tell every church along the way, that the conversation of what's next for any ministry, closing is always one of the options on the table and never the first option to pursue. We'll have to see unfold. Hang on, Mark. David's hand is up first, then I'll call on you, okay? David?
Yeah, Molly, that raises a question about the camps. Churches have a different mission statement quite often than what the camps do. Have we done any visioning with the camps about what their long-term mission is? I know that particularly Pilgrim Park, a great deal of their work, if you will, doesn't come from churches or church camps. It comes from sewing groups and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, sometimes it's your marketability in terms of what direction that your potential is, and if that's a mission that coincides with the church. Have we done any of that yet?
I would say we have done some of that, but not in a real formalized way. And I think that part of what the next steps might need to be is a much more formalized strategic planning effort around the camps. What the big change has been thinking of it as a ministry of the church to seeing it as an asset that supports a ministry of the church. So we continue to maintain those camps so that we can offer these retreats and the youth camps. But the youth camps are using less and less of the time and resources of the camps. And it's just like local churches have to often learn how to utilize their property in ways that allow the ministry to be sustained. The church I served in Nashville had 41 community organizations that used our building throughout the week. And that helped sustain the more traditional avenues of ministry. So I think that we have an ongoing commitment around youth camp and spiritual renewal and spiritual support. That is an important factor, but have we formalized it and written it all down? I don't think so. I think, and I have some ideas on how we might need to take some more intentional steps in the coming year. But that closing is on the table and not a first choice. And the strategic plan is, and financial realities, those are pieces that are very much on the table and need to be addressed. So thanks, David. Mark?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Molly, that I think you mentioned the two opposing groups. I think there is a possibility for some fruitful discussion between those two groups based on the idea of if the camps are anachronistic or not, and if so, how they can be made relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Because finances and mission tie into relevancy. And I think certain people think they're anachronistic, and those who think they're a base of the conference, there's a dialogue, I think, in that area between those two groups.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. I would agree. And I think that's part of what needs to happen in a gap time between saying you didn't make your budget, we're going to close you. Say you didn't make your budget, we got to have some real serious conversations and explore this in some new ways. We have to express it's a new level of seriousness. But I agree that I think that there are ways that I agree and disagree. There are going to be some people who are never going to have a constructive conversation that leads to common understanding around our camps. But I would say the 90% in the middle really could and make get us to a better place. Brett?
Sorry. I just wondered, was there existing deficits that, because this was a conversation before that, Tower Hill is partly owned by Community Renewal Society.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're going to be featured the next week or the week after. And to the extent that, are they ever going to contribute to the deficits if they're insisting on remaining part owners of the camp?
I've been working on developing a relationship with the executive director who started just shortly before I did. And Waltrina attends many of our council meetings and shows up to a lot of UCC Illinois Conference conversations and activities. Both of us have acknowledged to each other that the issues about Tower Hill need to be addressed. There is some woundedness in the CRS Illinois Conference relationship around this based on conversations that have been had before. So I've been a little careful to manage some of the politics of that. I believe I have a strong relationship with Waltrina, and she and I could begin to address some of the specific questions like the one you raise about our co-ownership and how we can move forward and what are some of the options we can look at. It does add a level of complexity that we co-own that property, and that the way that it's presented is we are empowered to manage the operations and take and in that, the idea is we would absorb all the profits, but really what that means is we absorb all the deficits, and we have for a lot of years. But just so everybody else knows, if we were to sell the Tower Hill property, right now 50% would stay with the Illinois Conference and 50% would go to Community Renewal Society. We would have to both equally agree that we were going to sell it and move forward with that. And they have not really utilized the property. They have not supported it financially. There's just a long history, but I've been working on that relationship so that we can begin some of those hard and politically challenging, say, conversations.
I know they were going through changes in their leadership, and we were flipping leadership like crazy at the time too. So it's good that you've both been in place for a while.
Yeah. Thanks, Brett. David?
Yeah, I know the time's getting close, but a couple quick questions still on the camps. One is have we considered just breaking the camps loose and giving them a chance to operate on their own?
I think that's a question. I think that's a question we need to address. Serving camps other places. When during my interview process, I talked about my experiences with other camps in the Central Pacific Conference. We had 2 camps. One of them operated as their own foundation, and that the members of the board of the camp were the members of the Idaho Association, and they operated with their own separate board, their own separate finances. It was not overseen by the conference at all. And our other camp in Oregon was set up more like ours is now, but we moved towards setting them, while I was there, setting them up as a subsidiary 501c3, which meant they had their own board and managed their own finances, but reported to the conference council on a regular basis. So they would have a representative that would report, but the conference council did not oversee or contribute to the general operating, did not support their operations or anything. That moved that separation. Other places it has moved to, there are a couple other options. There are camps that have, the operations had been turned over to an outside organization. UCCR is one of the most common ones of those. There are other camps that have been separated off and run as their own 501c3. There are other camps that have been sold to groups, and sometimes those are groups of leaders from the conference who then own and run the camps. So there are several models, and we need to be in discernment about what are the best options in our situation here. So
yeah, my quick input, again, I apologize for dominating the questions, but kind of hit a button with me, is that we'd have more neutrality on a separate board looking at this in terms of what their future would be than having in a situation where the entire conference is involved and you have the nuances of, you made the comment about shutting them both down versus one. A lot of people don't necessarily agree with that. On the other hand, we need some people who are specialized and focused just on keeping the camps going or making the decision to go ahead and shut them down, in my personal opinion.
yeah, there's an ongoing conversation. One last comment, David Knicker, I see your hand. David, you're on mute and your video is off, so can't tell. Okay,
Okay, there we go. I think the situation is complicated further with Tower Hill's development covenant. that
yes,
was entered
absolutely.
into, and that becomes a significant piece of that discussion as well.
Absolutely. There are layers and layers. This is not something we will at all solve today, or even collect all of the ideas about today. I just wanted to raise it for those of you who are here to ask about what's going on in the conference, to acknowledge that it is a conversation that is being had and needs to continue to be had. And the option of closing camps is on the table, and it is not the first option, in my opinion. And I will continue to reiterate that in all settings. That anyone that's talked to me about this knows I'm going to keep saying that. Anyway, we are just about out of time tonight. I want to really thank you all for coming out and being part of this conversation, of asking questions, of engaging in some conversations. I'm so grateful to be called as your conference minister. I love this work. I have fun with it. I enjoy it 95% of the time, which I think is a pretty high percentage for ministry setting. And I wish you all the blessings of Advent, that you may be inspired by the anticipation of the coming of the Christ child. Wanted to let you know too, Carol just sent me a note to remind you that the next 2 weeks we will have speakers for all conference chat, but then thank you guys so much. I appreciate the love. That the format that we have enjoyed for almost three years now of the Wednesday all conference chat, we're going to sunset this activity and be watching for what is going to emerge next. So we'll have 2 more sessions, and then we'll be we'll stop for Christmas, and then we'll be looking at some new opportunities and new types of conversations, Zoom-based and otherwise, come in 23. So watch your Faithful Fridays and your newsletters and your email from the conference, and for what's coming next. It'll be an exciting time. So thank you all. Happy Advent, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you all soon.